Lesson 3, the Rosa Master Distributed Fuel Systems. Learning Event 1. System component for the operation general of the Rose Master with the bumps at the cylinder, single cylinder output of the plunger inlet with the metering of the distributed type of the simplicity of the parameter van with the design of the contributed ease manufacture with the servicing and lower maintenance class general dependability of the ability to operate with the greater speed with the conventional type of the system. The basic Rosa Master model has 8 the parts with only 3 main with the rotating members. There is less chance for the pair of the part fitted with the development of the smart diesel engine for the greater engine speed. Simple injection system is in need of the problem is solved with the distributing type of the fuel with the pump. There is no spring load of the lamp surface with no ball bearings, the gears also, and most accessories are built and self-lubricated with the filtered fuel with the unit and operate in any position that has the same with the number of the parts, regardless of the number of cylinders reserved. A mechanical central figure of the governor, an integral part of the pump of the governor fuel with the drive through air off the engine's drive of the governor was supplied with the pump with the drive shaft with the transfer pump with the mount with the front with the pump with the draw of the fuel with the tank, the injection pump with the transfer pump with the spot with the display with the main type of lubrication with the pump supplied with the fuel by the fuel oil, the number of the other lubrications required with the switch mounted on the top of the fuel pump to control the fuel flow with the out of the pump. The switch activates with the solenoid within the engine drive. They open the metering valve allow the fuel to flow from the pump to the engine with the end master switch on the instrument panel is placed on the off position solenoid case of the close with the valve of the engine fuel during delivering of the stop of the engine. Charging cycle. The rotor revolved the charging path with the rotor register of the one with the charging port with the charging ring with the fuel transfer the pump with the pressure of the path with the pump with the cylinder forcing the plunger apart with the distribution proportionate to the amount of the fuel required for the injection on the fouling stroke with only at the fuel load the plungers move the most outward position control of the leaf spring with setting the mixing maximum fuel drift the making the charging passage of the rotor of the register of one with the charging port of the hydraulic cab with the discharge passage out of the register with between the head and the outlet port of the rollers are between the cam lobes. Discharging cycle the rotor continually revolve the charging path with the passage out of the register with the charging port for the brief the interval with the fuel tap of the rotor discharge with the passage register with the one of the head outlet ports after the registration takes place. Both the rotors contact the rise with the cam lobe with the end are forced together with the discharge of the injector strokes the fuel trapped between the plunger and the force through the axle patch with the one over the head with the outlet ports for the injection nozzle. Metering unit. The metering pump is closely fitted with the reciprocating pump obtained with the motion of the length of the plunger level the figure 45 with the operating with the vertical level the control with the term with the eccentric of the rocker level the running with directly off the cam with the fuel pump with the main shaft the position of the vertical level the eccentric of the rocker level the term with the travel of the plunger level consequently the travel of the metering plunge for the edge of the metering plunger starts upward the control stroke with the push and flow push the fuel of the injector through the passage form of the rotating distributor diff the stroke with the metering plunge for the term to the amount of the fuel going on to the injector with the verify with the change with the position vertical level between the stop of the pin for the cam rocker level with the rollers again with the inside with the top end. There's no travel to the vertical level on the metering plunger. There's no fuel that's going into the engine with the vertical level. There's moved over the over to the outside with the pin stroke with the metering plunger with the sufficient delivered enough the fuel to the engine with the full speed and load. Injector. The injector consists of the forged body with the properly fitted with the plunger with the figure 46 of the page 80 with the plunger is forced down again with the spring and action with the rocker arm activated with the push rod for them. The engine camshaft mounted on each of the end of the body with the cup which contained the nozzle tip on an intake with the stroke with the engine with the fuel metering pump with the force with the charged fuel with the exact amount necessary to meet the load and speed of the engine into its cup. Figure 45 shows the metering nut. The plunger of the link and nudge the plunger lever the cam and the cam roller. The pivot the roller and the cam rocker. The stop pin for the control rod. Operation. The operation meter pump that required with the fuel line with the passage leaving the cup with the be filled with the fuel with the figure 1, figure 47 on the page 8 with no naturally flow with the end of the fuel added with the fuel metering with the pump at the end of the will push the same amount of fuel into the injector cap the fuel alive with the cup during the compression stroke with the engine with the compressed air with the force through the small tray hole with the cup with the fuel oil step with the cup to expose the intense heat the blasting with the compression and this the preheated and broken the figure 2 figure 47 with the fuel degree before the top of the center of the plunger is LS force down with the preheat of the fuel discharge driven out into the cylinder of the 3 with the figure 47 the plunger end of the into stroke of the 4 figure 47 the small check valve located at the lower end of the fuel passage and the injector body with the check valve with the compression pressure for the blowing of the fuel back and then filling of the lines for the air. Figure 46 shows the injector type the fuel plunger length with the plunger spring with the plunger body with the check valve in the cup. Figure 47, the fuel of the injector, save the fuel intake of the preheating of the injection at the end of the stroke. That's learning event 2, the troubleshooting with the Rosa Master Fuel System. The information covered in this learning event is applicable to any of the equipment used for the Rosa Master Fuel System and engine for the component location may be verified depending on the equipment used. Use the appropriate technical manual for the exact component location. The Alice chamber, the model of the 645, the M with the screw loader will be used throughout the remainder of this lesson. The applicable manual is GM 538052391. 1-2 will begin with the learning event with location identifying the components of the fuel system. In order to troubleshoot the fuel system, you must make sure that you can identify, locate, and save the function of each component. Makeup of the fuel system, including the fuel tank, fuel sediment bowl, hand primer, pump of the fuel filter, the transfer pump of the fuel injection pump, the fuel injection valve, the fuel line. With the two systems compromised the overall fuel system with the engine, with the low pressure system, the ring of the fuel filter, the tank of the sediment bowl, primer pump of the fuel filter, the transfer of the pump with the return line with the tank with a high pressure jump system. They include the fuel injection pump, the fuel lines to the injector, figure 48 on page 82 show the fuel system and then order the flow. Fuel tank is mounted at the rear of the loader beneath the radiator. The failure pipe with extend through the radiator grid with the excess of the filling with the tank with the fuel tank drain is located at the bottom of the tank for the driving purpose. Fuel sediment bowl valve with the fuel supply with the fuel tank with the fuel sediment bowl down within the bracket along with the frame on the left side of the engine near the fuel injection pump. The component that acts with the primary fuel filter hand primer pump with the hand primer pump with the mount with the same bracket with the sediment bowl with the U for the primary of the system and after the replacement of the fuel filter cleaning of the fuel sediment bowl. Secondary fuel filter, sometimes called the combination fuel filter, is located on the left side of the engine. Secondary fuel filter provides additional cleaning of the fuel before it enters the fuel pump. Figure 48 shows the fuel system schematic diagram. 1, the fuel injection valve. 2, the fuel and return manifold. 3, the fuel injection pump. 4, the combination fuel filter. 5, the hand primer. 6, the fuel sediment bowl. 7, the fuel tank drain. 8, the fuel return line. 9, the fuel tank. And 10, the fuel injection lines. Fuel injection pump. The rotor master fuel is mounted in the front of the engine with the left side of the fuel from the pump is drawn with the fuel with the tank with the sediment fuel into the ejectors under the high pressure fuel injection line from the fuel pump with the pressurized fuel flow to the individual lines in each of the injector. Remember, these lines carry high pressure for the fuel to each of the injector. The fuel injection nozzle each of the nozzles supplied with the fuel through the injection nozzle. The high pressure fuel enters through the nozzle port of the atomized the cylinder to combine with the air to provide with explosive mixture of the fuel. Return line with the fuel. The return line carry with the unused fuel from the injectors back to the tank with the user. You are troubleshooting the scope of the order for the fuel system, determining that there was loss of fuel with the fuel pump. Now you just must check the following component within the low pressure tank of the system to record the problem. The first component that should be inspected are fuel tank and the shut-off valve. Check with the fuel tank with the shut-off valve. The leak is make sure the valve is open. The open position with the fuel tank has been filled with the fuel. With the check all the fuel line with the tank of the rotor master pump with the leakage with the damage with the caused by the fuel. So fuel with the check of the primary filter from the crack of the leaking sediment bowl. The damage of the gas with the leak of the fuel line fittings. Check with the hammer prime with the external leak with the make sure the pump is pushed into the pump body located in place with the pump valve with the check of the secondary filter leaks from the loose bleed screw, and finally check the pump for the leaking lines. The next troubleshooting problem is rough erratic running and edge for leaking the fuel line with the air in the fuel lines will cover the rough running of the engine because you've already checked for the low pressure for the side of the system. The inspection of the cover the fuel flow with the rose master pump with the injectors pump of the pump. Check the pump with the high pressure fuel outlet fitting for the leak of the damage. Check the injectors from the side of the leakage. Start the engine. Check each of the injector properly operation. Check loosen each of the injector and the connection of the 180 at a time sequence the wrap around or ground over the fitting to prevent the spray with the engine runs with the worst number of the one injector in line loose so that it's not faulty injector the cause. Checking. Continuing checking until you find the injector that does not cover the chain of the engine operation and let line close loose and check the valve injector, fuel injectors. Alright, I will not forget it. If the scoop loader engages with the fail of the servo, they have the check of the fuel tank with the proper servo. You have the check of the electrical solenoid connected to the rotor motor's master pump of the cylinder. If not open the fuel with the flow when they hit the pump, the check of the solenoid wire proper to the insulation, cleanliness, security. Another problem you may have the scope of the lead with the engine stop with the frequently the idle speed. With the problem C with the learning of 3 with the vent, but the less from the flow and a high speed adjustment. Learning 3 event component with the adjusting and repairing the place during the learning event. You will show them the adjusting and repairing the place for the components for the rotor master fuel system. They're also working to describe will be in accordance with the maintenance the allocation chart shown in figure 49. Figure 49 shows the maintenance allocation chart. The fuel filter element replace with the insulation. Refer to figure 50 to remove the vent plug with the 2 to remove the screw and gasket. 3 inspect the gasket and replace with the necessary. 4 remove the retaining ring. 5 to remove the discard of the element. 6 to remove the body. Check with the rubber sheet and the spring. Clean the body with the clean cloth for cleaning solvent. 7 remove the drain plug with drain the fuel with the filter before servicing. Note after the installation of the new filter element the vent for the system and loosening the vent plug, pumping the fuel primer until the flow of the fuel around the vent plug is free with the air bubble to tighten the vent plug. Note that servo the fuel filter every 500 hours. The fuel sediment bowl plate from the insulation for the figure 51. Loosen the bowl nut with the move of the bowl into the one side with the move of the empty with the fuel sediment bowl. Clean the bowl with a clean cloth. Check the bowl gasket with the plate with the necessary. Install the fuel sediment bowl with the curve of the bail and the screw with the vent with the fuel system. Figure 50 shows the fuel filter. Serve with the vent plug with the screw with the gasket retaining ring with the element of the body with the drain and plug. Figure 51 shows the fuel sediment bowl with the filter head with the fuel strain with the gasket bowl with the barrel with the fuel sediment and the bolt nut. The low pressure fuel system venting prime with the afterplay from the fuel filter cleaning with the sediment bowl with the vent with the prime fuel system and foul with the loose of the vent plug at the top of the fuel filter. Remove the screw, remove the barrel on the fuel primer pump to one side of the move of the primer pump the back, then the fourth the proper motion of the pump of the fuel filter. The fuel filter continues with the pumping until the fuel filter has been filled with the fuel with the flow of the fuel around the vent plug of the free with the air over the bubble. The time the vent plug securely in the top of the fuel filter, install the barrel and the primer pump with the screw with the locking screw. High pressure fuel system venting compartment of the fuel system. Fuel line that has been removed. The engine has been run out of the fuel. The loader has not been operative for some time. That may be necessary. The vent with the high pressure system will facilitate the starting and ensure the correct venting procedures as is followed. Disconnect the fuel lines at all 6 nozzles and hold the figure 50C to press the accelerator. Crank the engine. Observe the fuel lines. Check with the fuel flow for each of the line with no air bubbles present. Disconnect the crank and continue with the line with the nozzle holds and tighten securely. Hand primer pump with the sediment bowl with the remove the insulation. Disconnect the fuel line from the sediment with the bowl and the bowl with the primer pump. Figure 52 shows the fuel system venting and the priming. The injector nozzle and holder of the fuel lines. Remove the 2 screws, the nuts of the lock with the washer. Securing the hand primer pump with the bracket. Remove the hand pump, the primer, the pump, with the sediment, the bowl with the bracket. Remove the sediment bowl from the fitting of the hand primer, the pump, the install of the hand primer pump. Sediment bowl reverses the procedure to above. Throttle link is the remove the insulation. Refer to figure 53. Disconnect the 2 bolt joints. Remove the clap at the rear end of the bolt. Rod with disconnect the 2 bolt joints. Remove the front with the cloud. With remove the 4 jam nut with the lock washer. 2 lever with the bearing with the crossover with the lever. Remove the 2 cotter pin with the pivot pin and the accelerator. Remove the pedal spring and the limit of the control rod. Install the throttle link for the reverse over the removal and adjusting with the rear of the disconnect from the speed light control level of the start of the engine. Rotate the lower adjustment screw with the in and out with the set of the low idle speed. Rotate the high adjustment and the screw with the set of the high idle speed. Connect the rear rod of the speed control lever with adjusting the length of the rod and tab the low speed and adjusting screw with the adjusting to the lever. Stop with the accelerator and the fully release. Cold weather starting aid. Remove with the refer to figure 54. Remove the 2 screws and the disconnect of the control cable. Remove the clamp from the top of the hydraulic tank with the control knob with the remove of the cable. Figure 53 show the throttle linkage. Remove the insulation, the accelerator, the pedal spring with the pinion with the ball joint, front end with the jam nut with the ball joint with the crossover with the levering bearing jam nut, the ball joint with the rear rod, clamp with the ball joint, speed control level with the high adjustment screw with the low adjusting screw. Figure 54 cold weather starting aid. The control cable, the cylinder with the latch for the latch bracket with the screw with the valve bracket, the screws 2 the cap of the valve with the screw 3 tube and the outlet tube. Disconnect the latch with the unscrew with the cylinder with the valve, install the cap of the valve, then disconnect the outlet tube with the valve, with the disconnect with the injector with the manifold, install the plug of the manifold. After moving the injector, remove the 2 screw with the nuts with the valve bracket, remove the 2 screw with the nuts with the valve bracket, remove the 2 screws with the nuts of the latch bracket. Fuel filter, remove the insulation in front of the figure 55, the disconnect the fuel line from the fuel for the filter, remove the 4 screw with the lock of the washer, securing the fuel filter to the bracket, remove the fuel filter from beneath the bracket. Fuel filter, fuel transfer strainer. The remove of the insulation. Refer to figure 56 with the disconnect of the fuel filter. The pump of the inlet with the remove of the elbow. The remove of the end of the plate with the sleeve of the strainer. Claim the street. Enter and install the strainer end of the plate with the sleeve of the pump. With install the elbow. Connect the filter with the pump of the inlet line with the prime and the vent with the fuel system if necessary. Figure 55 fuel filter. Remove of the insulation. Vent plug. Screw with the gasket. Screw with the lock washer. The gasket. The retaining ring element with the body and the drain plug. Figure 56 fuel transfer pump. The fuel inlet filter inlet fuel to the inlet pipe. The outlet and the elbow. The inlet plate sleeve with the strainer end plate with the screws and fuel injection pump. Lesson 4: pressurized fuel system. Pressurized timed fuel systems.